Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kendrick. Hello, everybody. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Back at it again. I don't want to waste any time. I want to go ahead and get right into this. So, on the list of topics for today, gonna talk about some Tua. I want to talk about the Dolphins and the Titans. I want to put 3 losses from this last week into perspective and into context, because context and perspective is always important. I want to recap the Cowboys game against the Cardinals and some drama right now that is revolving around the Cowboys as a franchise. And my final topic of the day, 3 teams right now are undefeated. 2 of them play each other. I believe that after this weekend, there will be only one undefeated team left, and the team that I think is going to be undefeated will be a team that I don't think you expect me to say. So let's go ahead and get right into this, though. So Tua is going to get the start against the Rams. It's finally Tua time. The Dolphins fans have been clamoring for it. We've been clamoring for it. We're finally going to get to see Tua time. And I believe this is the right decision. And I believe it's the right decision for 3 different reasons. Reason number 1, it's not about this season. Right? A lot of people are looking at the Dolphins and they're saying, hey, they're second in their division. The Patriots don't look like world beaters. The Jets are the Jets. And Buffalo's on a 2-game losing streak. Now they've lost to 2 really good teams, as it turns out, the Chiefs and the Titans. But people are looking at it and they're saying, oh my god, the the Miami Dolphins actually have a chance to maybe sneak a wild card win. Can they maybe get hot? This is a well-coached team. Maybe they can do something. Maybe they can get a wild card spot. This isn't about this season. It's not about it. This is about the future of the team. This season is about establishing a culture, seeing what you have on this roster, seeing what you have in Tua, your younger players, establishing the culture with Brian Flores and his coaching staff, and moving forward. Alright, reason number 2. When you look at how these younger quarterbacks are playing in the game, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, you need to see what Tua has. And you need to see what Tua has because when you looked at the draft, right? When the draft was coming about and you listened to all the analysts, a lot of people said, and you could go back a year before the draft when Tua, Burrow, and Herbert, when they were still all playing, what was the consensus opinion? When Tua comes out, he's going to be the number 1 overall pick, and he's going to be a surefire to hit franchise quarterback. Yes, it's a bit different because he's left-handed, but when you looked at what he did for Alabama was a run-first team. They never really had a great quarterback. You tell me the quarterback who's actually had NFL success who came out of Alabama. Tua looked different than all of them. He made Nick Saban change the offense. From run first to they actually let Tua throw, and their team was so dominant. Most of the time, Tua, he didn't even have to play in the 4th quarter. There were times he barely played in the second half because the team was so far ahead and he was so good. And it wasn't about Justin Herbert. It wasn't about Joe Burrow. People, they weren't even sure Joe Burrow was going to be draftable. You know, when it came to Justin Herbert, he was looked at as, oh, well, maybe he could be good, but Oregon's system, is it really going to translate to the NFL? And then, of course, this past college season happens, and people are looking at Joe Burrow, and they're saying, okay, it's between Joe Burrow and Tua. And there were those who said you take Joe Burrow because of the season he just had. There were those who said you take Tua, or maybe if he hadn't been injured, he still would probably go ahead of Burrow. Either way, Burrow gets drafted first. Then it's Tua. Immediately after it's Justin Herbert. We've seen Burrow start the whole season, and he's been incredible. There are only 3 quarterbacks in the NFL right now who are graded in the top 10 for both positively graded throws and avoiding negatively graded throws. One of those 3 is Joe Burrow. And you look at every single game, the only game I think we can realistically say the Bengals had no shot of winning was the game against the Ravens. Other than that, did you see what he did to the Colts' #1 defense? He took them to town. And if he was a veteran quarterback, he would have put that game away. Right? He almost beat Cleveland. He almost beat the Chargers when Taylor was still quarterbacking them. And speaking of the Chargers, have you seen Justin Herbert with him? They had the Saints. They had the Buccaneers. They had the Chiefs. They had chances to win all of these games, and once again, it just comes down to maybe if it was a veteran quarterback, if they weren't rookies, they probably would have sealed those games. Right now, these 2 guys are 1A, 1B for Offensive Rookie of the Year. At the moment, I would probably lean with Herbert just because the stat sheet looks better. Their records are probably going to be somewhat the same, but the stat sheet's kind of similar. I think Herbert has some better numbers, but you looked at how these 2 were playing and you were like, okay, so what about Tua? What about Tua? He has to play just as well as these guys, right? I mean, Burrow, all except for 1 year, he was never better than Tua. Justin Herbert was never better than Tua in college. And now they're both succeeding at a very high level. What is Tua gonna do? And the third reason is because the Houston Texans are hot garbage. And the Miami Dolphins own their first round pick. Now, I said a couple podcasts ago, I thought if any team was going to flip the fortune, the 0-2 curse, the 0-3 curse of not making the playoffs, I thought it'd be the Texans. They've done it before. I thought maybe they could do it again. I was dead wrong. Now, I didn't predict they would do it. I just said out of all the teams, I thought they had the best chance to do it. I don't think any team is going to do it, and especially not the Houston Texans, because they've continued to just look bad. Well, at least, what? Their game against Tennessee was good. I mean, they were competitive. They almost won it. But, their record's going to be bad. Right now, I think they have a top 5 pick. And there's going to be a real debate here on what does Miami do with it. Trevor Lawrence is going to be the #1 overall pick no matter what. But after that, there's Justin Fields and there's Trey Lance. What did the Dolphins do? They need to see what Tua has in them. Now, Fitzpatrick, he came out, and I feel really, really bad for Fitzpatrick, because this has happened in every single location Fitzpatrick has been in. Now, I'm not gonna give him a sob story or anything like that, because let's be honest, I talked about narratives. This is what happens. The narrative around Fitzpatrick is he's good for a few games. He's good enough to keep you in a game. He's also bad enough to keep you out of a game. He's good enough 1 week to throw 400 yards and 5 touchdowns to no picks and a perfect passer rating. And he's bad enough to throw 130 yards and no touchdowns and 6 picks, and you get blown out. That is the history of Fitzpatrick. So this is just kind of what he's earned. And even as well as the Dolphins have performed, it wasn't about the season. And so, I mean, I get it, and I feel bad for Fitzy, and he was quoted in saying on Wednesday that when he heard the news, he was heartbroken, and his heart hurt all day. This was like the first time in a while he's felt like a team was really his, and he knows that it's not forever, and he said that before, I think even when he was in Tampa Bay, right, he was quoted in saying he knew the only way he was going to keep his job was if he won the MVP, meaning every single week he needs to play the best quarterback of the week, or he was going to lose his job. And the team needs to win basically every game or he will lose his job, because that's the narrative around Fitzpatrick. He's had a great career. He's made a lot of money. He is one of the best men in the league. He's a consummate professional. He's handled himself with the utmost class. If there was a Hall of Fame for being a professional, Ryan Fitzpatrick would be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's outstanding, and he's rooting for Tua. I loved seeing him on the sideline root for him, and he said he really hopes that Tua continues to play well, and he wants to get him prepared and everything. And they picked a good time to do this. They did it during the bye week. The problem is he's facing the Rams, and he's facing Aaron Donald. So that's kind of the fear with Tua, right? Alex Smith, he got his first in-game action against the Rams, and Aaron Donald jumped on his back, and I about thought Alex Smith would break. And so I think there's kind of that fear with Tua. Will he get hurt? This is a good Rams defense. Aaron Donald is going to probably destroy their offensive line. I think the offensive line of the Miami is ranked 31st by Pro Football Focus, so it's not great. But what Ryan Fitzpatrick has done is he's just kind of, he has been able to cover up the flaws in the offensive line because of his play. What he sees in the defense, what he can call out, his mobility, that is what he's been able to do. But this is the right decision to make for Tua. He needs to play. Because, again, it's not about the season. The other young quarterbacks are playing very, very well. And there is a chance they will get a top 5 pick because of Houston. There is a real chance they will get a great draft pick, at least a top 10 pick. And there are holes all over the team. But the biggest hole you need to fill at all costs is quarterback. If you don't have the quarterback, nothing else matters. We've seen that with a bunch of other teams, right? The Bears with Trubisky. You got a bunch of other pieces. They're all, the offensive line was really good. They had good wide receivers. Defense was great. They didn't have the quarterback. They couldn't do anything. Jacksonville. The Saxonville year. The offensive line was relatively decent, good wide receivers, an amazing defense, didn't have the quarterback, it didn't matter. So everything for Miami is moot moving forward if Tua can't play. And you're not going to hitch your wagon to Ryan Fitzpatrick year after year on a 1-year deal. It just won't happen. It doesn't make good business sense. Maybe he can remain a backup on the team. I don't think he's going to want to do that. I think there's another team out there that's going to draft a rookie quarterback, and they might want to get Fitzpatrick to be their backup so that he can mentor them, so on and so forth. But nonetheless, I think it's a good decision to play Tua. Now, speaking of Miami, their head coach, Brian Flores, is outstanding. And I don't think his record is going to make a lot of people think he is outstanding, but when you put it into context, and you look at what he's had to work with, the fact that his quarterback has basically been Ryan Fitzpatrick for 2 years. I think he's coached a total of, 22 games? And he's won 8 of the 22. Like, again, that's not a great record. A lot of people would look at that and they go, what, 5-11 his first year? Right now he's 3-3. I mean, what are we geeking over? One of the hallmarks to being a good head coach is just watching the team and seeing, do they play with effort? Right? You look at the Jets right now, what's one of the big things we notice? The Jets don't look like they're trying. The Jets look pathetic. They look like they've quit. They have given up on the season. And that is why I believe Adam Gase should be fired and why I believe he will be fired. The Washington football team under Jay Gruden, before they were named the Washington football team, do you remember the end of Jay Gruden's run there? The team flat out quit on him, and they didn't look like they were trying anymore. He lost, and it didn't even look like Jay Gruden really cared, right? Now, Todd Bowles, I think, is one of the exceptions. I think Todd Bowles can coach. I thought he was doing a really, really good job with the Jets, given what he has. But, towards the end of his run with the Jets, for whatever reason, he lost the locker room, it looked like they stopped trying, and they went ahead and they moved on from him. Brian Flores with the Dolphins has been incredible, and it looks like the Dolphins get better every single week. Last season, they didn't start off that great, but towards the end of the season, the team never gave up, and they won, they won like 5 out of their last, they went 5-3 down the stretch in their final 8 games, something like that? They were just great. Like, they ended the season on a pretty good note. It seemed like Brian Flores had kind of figured it out. The culture was getting established. Now this season, they're 3-3. And you look at their season so far, they have not been blown out. They have blown out 3 teams. They lost a close game, a 10-point game to the Patriots. They lost a 3-point game to the Bills. And then they blew out the Jaguars. And then they lost a 1-score game against Seattle. And then they blew out the 49ers, and then they blew out the Jets. They've had a pretty solid season, and the team doesn't look like it's quitting. Every single week, it seems like they're playing harder and harder, and they truly believe in Brian Flores and what he's trying to do there. Brian Flores right now, if you had to, ask me who's coach of the year, who the coach of the year candidates, I would say guys like Pete Carroll. I would say like Sean McDermott. I of course say Andy Reid. I'll put in Matt LaFleur. Mike Vrabel. I will 100% put Brian Flores in the conversation. He has this Miami team second in the division through 6 games. Who would have seen that coming? Who would have seen that coming? That is incredible. This guy can coach, and I just really, really hope that Miami, as an organization, don't pay attention to their records so much this season and probably even next season. I just hope they give him a chance to really etch his name in this team, really get a chance to establish this culture, and I want to see what they can do. The time to fire a head coach is not right now. I don't believe it's next season. I don't even believe it's next season. Now, if the team quits on them, that's a whole other story. But the way this team is trending, it is trending upwards, and they've been amazing. Another head coach, Mike Vrabel, who I also believe maybe at this point is coach of the year. Mike Vrabel. Oh yeah, before, I know some people are probably going to kill me for this. Mike Tomlin as well, definitely. I do have to put him in the conversation, given what he's done. But Mike Vrabel, what he's done with Tennessee, he has completely turned this team around. Remember, the narrative on Tennessee was, yeah, they're about 500. The last 3 years, they've been 9-7. This season, they are 5-0. They are one of 3 undefeated teams. And they're doing this when they all battled COVID. They couldn't practice for about a week and a half. They came back, they dominated the Bills, and then they beat the Texans, and it's the way they beat the Texans. This is why I think Mike Vrabel is amazing. Warren Sharp pointed this out. This is just incredible that Mike Vrabel could do this. So, the Texans were driving to take the lead in the game. He knew the Texans were going to score. The way they were moving the ball, the way Deshaun Watson looked, he knew they were going to score. Mike Vrabel sends a 12th man out there on defense. They get a penalty. Because of this penalty, the clock stopped. So they got to save their timeouts. The clock stopped. They gave Houston a free first down. And, of course, they went ahead and they scored. And the thing was, he valued time over the scoreboard. He wanted more time on the clock so that he could give his offense a real chance to go down there and score themselves. And sure enough, what happened? With 4 seconds left, they got the game-tying touchdown, and of course they go into overtime and they win the game. Mike Vrabel is a genius, and this isn't the only time he's done something like this. He took a page right out of Bill Belichick's book. He did that whole, in the punting formation, they false started, it drained some time off the clock, and there was a whole sequence, I can't remember everything about it, but the Bill Belichick had done that same thing before. Mike Vrabel used it against him. I guess you could say, the consensus opinion on taking quote-unquote Belichick disciples was very looked down upon because they never panned out. Bill Belichick was always consistent, and guys who worked under him while with New England seemed great. As soon as they got away from him, they seemed terrible, i.e. Matt Patricia, Josh McDaniels, Mangini, so on and so forth. There's a bunch of other guys. I am going to hold out any and all judgment of Joe Judge, because I think that with COVID and the limited amount of practice he even got to have with this team, I'm not going to judge him based off of this season. I am going to wait, and we will judge him a season or two in the future with how the Giants look. Because right now, their defense looks great. It's the offense that's the problem. Daniel Jones is still a fumble machine. I think that's what's going to cost him his job in New York. But I'm going to reserve all judgment of the Giants until further notice. But when it comes to Brian Flores, he was a true and true head position coach under Bill Belichick. He had a bunch of different roles, won a bunch of Super Bowls with them. He is the true and true head coach who's really breaking the narrative. Mike Vrabel, however, he was a player. He never actually coached along with Bill Belichick. He never coached a position with Bill Belichick. He actually got coached by Bill Belichick himself. And he's taken a lot of tips and tricks from Bill Belichick and has used it in his coaching career thus far, and he is getting a load of praise for it. Right now, if I would have to say who was coach of the year, I think people would give it to Mike Vrabel because of the story and because of the narrative around Tennessee. People would look at Tennessee and how they came into the season. Is Brian Tannehill was it really just a fluke? Can he really keep it up? The defense, I don't know. They lost some pieces. Is the defense going to be good? I don't know. When it comes to Derrick Henry, did they give him too many touches? This team's been every single year 9-7. How are they going to start it? and they are one of 3 undefeated teams, and the story is great. Ryan Tannehill, he is proof that even later in your career, you can turn into a franchise quarterback. Like, you could be a franchise quarterback. You just need to land in a great spot. I've said this on numerous occasions. When I've said this about Darnold, I've said this about Baker. Where you land matters. Mariota, where you land matters. How the guys build around you, how the team supports you matters. Mike Vrabel's incredible. Brian Flores is incredible. I cannot wait to see how these teams look moving forward, because they're both just smart. They clearly get guys to build in. Mike Vrabel's a tough guy. He gets along with the team. I've seen the videos of him practicing with his team. I mean, he gets out there, he puts hands on guys, he blocks for them, he tries to rush them, he runs routes with them. He is great. Brian Flores motivates his players. They believe in him. They play hard every single week. They just continue to play harder and harder. I hope that them benching Fitzpatrick doesn't throw the team off. I hope they all know that this is about Tua and seeing for the future, so I hope they continue to play hard even if he does struggle a bit more. Like, I would not be surprised if Miami, from this point on, just starts losing a bunch of these games and they finish with one of the worst records in the league. I wouldn't be surprised, because there's going to be some growing pains. Tua is a rookie. There's going to be some growing pains. He's going to make some really bad decisions. He's going to make some true rookie decisions. There are some games, I think even against the Rams, he could look overwhelmed by their pass rush and he could look like garbage. But it's about seeing what you have in him. For Tennessee, I mean, this is the run. With Tannehill on this contract, they have him. Derrick Henry there. The offensive line still mostly intact. Obviously, they lost Taylor Lewan, which is a big loss, and it's very, very unfortunate. But A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, that tight end trio that they have, the defense, it's just about, can they maybe find an edge rusher or something in not in free agency, but in before the trade deadline, something like that. Can they execute? Because Beasley and Clowney's been great. Beasley looks like Beasley in Atlanta. So he's not doing too much. But I think both these teams are here to stay. I hope to see these head coaches around for a long time, because they seem to know what they're doing and their teams seem to be only improving. And I just think the game when it comes to the quarterbacks that are coming into the league and who are in the league right now and the head coaches around the league, there aren't many head coaches that we look at right now and say are bad. Right? When we look at the head coaches and we say they are bad, I mean, we think of Patricia, Adam Gase, and, I mean, that's it. Mike McCarthy, because of what's been happening with the Cowboys, but other than that, I mean, that's it. Who else do we really look at and say they're a bad head coach or that the team is just terrible? It's Gase, it's Patricia, and it's Mike McCarthy. I still want to give Mike McCarthy a bit of a chance, but the team appears to have quit on him and the coaching staff, so it might be time to get him out of there. We'll talk about that a bit later, but either way, Tua, it's time for him to start. Flores and Vrabel are amazing. Anyways, coming up next, I want to put 3 losses into context for you and put them into perspective, because a lot of people, they saw these losses and they freaked out and they just went up in arms and said, all right, it's time to blow it up. This is terrible. It's time to move on. We need to make drastic changes. I don't believe that. That coming up next.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about Tua, talked about Miami, talked about the Titans. I think it is time to start Tua, and the job that Brian Flores and Mike Vrabel have done for their respective teams has been outstanding. I did not see Tennessee being this good. I didn't see Miami being this good. But the thing is, it's not about Miami sneakily being good and finding their way into a wild card spot. This season is about seeing what their young talent is, seeing where the holes on this team are. I'm sure they can already spot it. The offensive line needs a lot of help, but it's about finding the weak points of this team. And of course, I'm sorry if you could hear that. And of course, it is about seeing what you have in Tua. It's all about seeing what you have to work with. And speaking of seeing what teams have to work with, 3 teams lost this past week, and the reaction to all the losses were, this team's in trouble, this guy needs to be benched, this guy needs to be replaced, this team needs to look to move forward, they need to look to the draft, blah, 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 blah. I want to put 3 losses into perspective. And the 3 teams we're going to focus on is the New England Patriots, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Cleveland Browns. Let's go ahead and let's start with the Patriots. So the Patriots ended up losing to a Denver team that absolutely, I think, caught them off guard. Now, let's go and put this into context. The New England Patriots had 1 practice leading up to this game because they were dealing with COVID issues. Cam Newton, this was his first game back since contracting the coronavirus. And let's be honest, we don't know how it really affected Cam Newton. We have no idea how he feels. What he says in the media, what he says publicly is all fine and dandy. We know guys always lie about injuries. We know guys are never all the way honest, right? A guy could have a pulled groin, and going into the game, he'll say, it feels fine, and then we see them out there, and they just don't look the same. Right, guys are never truly honest about their injuries. And even though this isn't necessarily an injury, this is an illness, I don't believe Cam Newton will probably ever let people know how it really affected them, or if he does, it will be in the offseason. I don't believe it'll be during the season. But you have 1 practice heading into this game, only 2 healthy offensive linemen, and as soon as the game started, Denver had a game plan, and it was blitz Cam Newton to hell, and let's just see if he can beat us. And they couldn't. Because none of his receivers can get open. N'Keal Harry, he can't separate from me. He looks like a bust. Julian Edelman, he can separate when it comes to the slot. You know, he's a tough guy, but he's also become a drop machine. And then outside of him, who else are they throwing to? Damiere Byrd? You put any other quarterback, if you had Brian Hoyer or Jarrett Stidham in the place of Cam Newton in that game, I think they would have done even worse. Because at least Cam Newton is a threat to run. Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer are no threat to run. They would have looked even worse. I think still New England's only chance to success is with Cam Newton. He needs to run the ball like 10 times a game. And let's be honest, guys, once again, coming into the season, you looked at New England and you said they are really lacking talent. Well, you go into this game after your team's been dealing with COVID issues. Stephon Gilmore is out. Cam Newton was out. He just came back. You had 1 practice. You're missing even more pieces on the offensive line. And you're going to expect Cam Newton against a still good Denver defense. You're just going to expect him to beat it with N'Keal Harry and Julian Edelman as like his 1A, 1B first options? How is that? How do you expect there to be any kind of success there? This New England squad desperately needs a deep threat. And I think there's a few options out there for them to attempt to make a trade for, right? I look at guys like Michael Gallup with the Cowboys. I think they could afford to move off of Michael Gallup. They have CeeDee Lamb there. I think CeeDee Lamb can easily be their number 2 receiver. Wilson is there. He can be their number 3. Or maybe you could even move him so he can play outside and CeeDee can stay in the slot. I think they could probably make a trade for a guy like Michael Gallup. I think a guy like Julio Jones could be open for trade because Atlanta is going to be shopping him and Matt Ryan. I think you could maybe somehow convince Cleveland to part with OBJ or even Jarvis Landry. One of the two. I think they could part with one of them. I think they'd rather part with OBJ. But I just think that New England needs some help, but this loss against Denver was not the end of the world. 1 practice, you were missing even more of your starters on a team that's already talent deficient, and Cam Newton just got back from battling COVID. Can we relax? It's not man overboard. I think moving forward, look, New England's schedule is tough. It's not going to get any easier, but I don't think any part of their schedule will be harder than it was this week against Denver. They blitzed like crazy against Cam Newton. They have great speed on that defense, so they were able to get to him repeatedly, and it was an ugly loss coming off of a very, very hectic last 2 weeks for New England. I don't think that their season is done. I don't think this team is done. I'm not super concerned about them. I'm concerned if COVID spreads through their team again, and if they have to miss even more practices, because this is not the first time the Patriots have closed their facility. I think they've closed it a few times already. So, I mean, I'm not super concerned. This loss, put it in the context, the team was not prepared. The quarterback, I don't know how he's feeling. I don't think he's 100% right now because of the illness. Let's just wait and see. Let's not go man overboard. I think New England will be fine moving forward. Now I'll go to the Eagles. Guys, do you realize that the Eagles were playing against the Ravens, which are probably maybe the second or third best team in the AFC? I think the Chiefs are still number one. The conversation kind of goes between the Ravens and the Titans, and just if you want to give the Titans the respect because they've beaten the Ravens and they're undefeated, go ahead and put Tennessee there. But if you think that Lamar Jackson, because he just won the MVP, because the team is mainly intact, the offensive line, the defense, everything, if you want to go ahead and give the credit to them, go ahead and give it to them. I really don't care. I'm fine either way. But, guys, look at what Carson Wentz is working with. Can we just look at what Carson Wentz is working with? This is what Carson Wentz was attempting to complete his comeback with against the Ravens. All right, he got it to what, 22-30? I mean, he got close. He battled back. At the beginning, it didn't look competitive, but he battled his team back, and this is who he was working with. I'm going to give you guys all the first ballot Hall of Famers he got on his offense, right? He was throwing to Boston Scott. He was throwing to Travis Fulgham, Greg Ward, John Hightower, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Richard Rodgers, and let me not forget the immortal Jason Kroom. Who? What? Richard Rodgers, when's the last time he was in the league? I remember him with Green Bay, and then he disappeared for a couple seasons. All of a sudden, he's with Philadelphia, and they lost Zach Ertz. I think Deshaun Jackson is maybe supposed to be healthy for the next game, but then also Lane Johnson's hurt. I mean, they're down to Jason Kelce and guys. It's Jason Kelce and turnstiles at every other position on their offensive line. This team, you put any other quarterback with all of that. You ask Russell Wilson. You tell Russell Wilson, all right, so we're going to take away Lockett, and we're going to take away DK, and we're going to take away David Moore, and we're going to take away every single starter on your offensive line except for your center, and we're going to take away your starting running back, and we're going to take away your starting tight end. Now, carry us to victory. Even Russell Wilson would look pretty bad, I believe. Not as bad as Carson Wentz, but I believe he'd still look bad. You're asking Carson Wentz to do this with trash. And I hate saying that. I really do. I hate saying that, but you're asking him to do it with trash. With below average to maybe average talent. Maybe these guys can all of a sudden round into superstars. Maybe they can round into really solid NFL players. Maybe this is their shot to do so. But at the moment, they're not Julio Jones. At the moment, they're not even Michael Gallup. They don't even have a Michael Gallup level receiver over there. It's a bunch of dudes. Can we stop judging Carson Wentz so heavily? And look, I get it. He's been playing some of the worst quarterback this season. He's been one of the most turnover-prone quarterbacks this season. He is a big reason. He's not the reason that the Eagles are so bad, but he isn't helping them, and he's been trying to overcompensate and be a playmaker, and it's hurting his team even more. I understand that. But again, people, he hasn't had Jeffrey in forever. He hasn't had Deshaun Jackson like it all since he got to Philadelphia. And then they have this rookie that they draft. He can't even see the field because he's hurt. and then you lose Zach Ertz. And then you lose every single offensive lineman in like the first 2 weeks of the season. You lost 2 of them like before the season began. How do you expect this team to be successful at all? The fact that they're even where they are right now, I think it's kind of incredible. And even then, it's not much to speak of. They're 1-4-1. I mean, this team, and people are going man overboard, and they're calling for Jalen Hurts to be the starter, and they're like, oh my god, Carson Wentz, he's just not helping us. He almost came back against Baltimore, playing with that, throwing to those receivers, and we're gonna kill him for it? That is insane. You take away any quarterback's top 3 receiving targets, and their top tight end, and their top running back, and 4 out of their 5 starting offensive linemen, and if you expect them to still play a great game, you have some very, very high expectations of your quarterback. That's all I gotta say. You have some very high expectations, and I gotta say, they're not very realistic. Let's calm down. I think ESPN, their metric system, they call it FPI, I don't really quite understand it, but they have the Eagles winning this division at 6-9-1. Dallas doesn't look great, the Giants don't look great, Washington doesn't look great, and granted, neither does Philadelphia, and if they win the NFC East with a 6-9-1 record, I think that would be, I mean, what is that? That's gotta be one of the worst records to ever win a division, right? I think about the 7-8-1 Panthers. I think the Seahawks won the division at 7-9 before. Has there ever been a team that's won a division at 6-9-1? I really don't know. I think it'd be interesting to find out. But let's calm down about the Eagles' loss, guys. I mean, yeah, people are killing Carson Wentz because of any of his top targets, like none of his top offensive linemen, not his top tight end, not his top running back, and people are expecting him to perform extremely well. People are expecting him to win all these games and look like an MVP candidate. That's just crazy. I know he got paid a lot of money, I get that, but again, just take away anyone's top players at every single position and just see how they perform. It would not look pretty for any of these quarterbacks, guys. And last but not least, we're going to go into Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns. They were blown out by Pittsburgh. They've faced all 3 of their in-division rivals. They've had 30 points dropped on them by all 3 of them, but they beat the Bengals, and they didn't look competitive against the Ravens, and they didn't look competitive against the Steelers. And people right now are calling for Baker Mayfield to be benched, and to look for a new quarterback, and all this stuff, and I'm not going to push back on it too much, but what I am gonna say is just this. If the Pittsburgh Steelers game is the game that made you think Baker Mayfield needs to go and that he needs to be benched and he needs to be sat, I'm just gonna say, that's not the time to make the argument. And the reason why it's not time to make the argument is this. All season long, people have been talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, and Pro Football Focus has noted this. They pressure the quarterback on 50% of the dropbacks. 50% of the time, they pressure the quarterback. So if you drop back as your quarterback 30 times, on 15 of them, you're getting pressured. That is insane. It is by far and away number 1 in the league. The Pittsburgh Steelers, their Twitter account, posted a graphic on Wednesday showing all the categories they're ranked 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in. I am going to read all of them, and it's going to get to the point where you're going to wonder when I'm going to stop. And that's just the thing. It keeps going. So here's the whole graphic. They are number 1 in net passing yards allowed. Number 1 in quarterback hit percentage on pass plays. Quarterback hurries per game. Quarterback pressures per game. Sacks per game. Sacks per pass attempt percentage. Tackles for loss per game. Total yards allowed. That's everything they're number 1 in. They're number 2 in defensive completion percentage, interceptions per game, interception rate, quarterback hits, rushing yards allowed per carry, rushing yards allowed per game, total yards allowed per game, and they're number 3 in fewest completions allowed, rushing touchdowns allowed, scoring defense, total yards per play, and yards lost by sacks. If you're telling me that this is the game that made you think Baker Mayfield needs to be sat down, I think it's the wrong time to do so. He came into the game with injured ribs. I think they said he has some cracked ribs, and you could see it very early. As soon as he got planted into the ground, he did not look right. And I do not understand why the Browns played him. Just because he says he's okay to play does not mean he is. I don't know why it took them until the third quarter to finally bench him and play Case Keenum. I don't understand any of that. I thought the way Baker looked, he shouldn't have played at all. What did they see in practice to make them think Baker Mayfield was okay to play? I don't understand that. I think that was a serious coaching problem. They should not have played him. They should have given Case Keenum all the first team reps, and they should have played Baker Mayfield. Don't understand it. But, and look, I get it. All the people saying that they should bench Baker, here's what I think. I think they should bench Baker for a game. 1, for his health. 2, to send him a message. Like, don't tell him it's because of his health, but tell him that they need him to play better and to go ahead and bench him for the next game. I don't know. Do something like that. But I don't think because of that game, it is time to bench him. That Pittsburgh Steelers defense is ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. The Steelers are undefeated. They're one of 3 undefeated teams. Okay? This isn't the Jets. This isn't the Giants. This is the Steelers. And here's actually a little fun fact for you. Did you guys know, and this was courtesy of Pro Football Focus, did you guys know that through week 5, Baker Mayfield had faced the hardest schedule of passing defenses? Did you guys know that? The top 4 quarterbacks were Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, Carson Wentz, and Patrick Mahomes. Baker Mayfield had faced the hardest schedule of passing defenses through week 5, and yet people are killing him for his performances. And look, I gotta say, alright, this is the 3rd year in the league. I know that he's been surrounded in dysfunction, and it's not always fair, but he does need to play better. I think so far, Pro Football Focus has also noted, and I think they even posted this on Wednesday, but they showed that in his rookie season, I think he had like 10 games where he had an 80 or so Pro Football Focus grade, which is outstanding. As a raw rookie, to have 10 80-plus games is great. His second year, I think he had 1 or 2. This year so far, he has 0. I don't care if it is a top 5 defense, or if it's one of the top 10 best passing defenses. You do need to play better. Just because they're good doesn't mean you can play terrible. So I'm not trying to absolve him, but let's put it into perspective. Injured ribs against that defense. The team is 4-2, and they had faced through week 5 the hardest schedule against passing defensives. There's a reason they have relied on their run game so heavily. That's all I'm trying to say, guys. If that was the game for you to go ahead and be man overboard on Baker Mayfield, I just don't think it was the time. You should have been over him before that game. You shouldn't be over him after he faces, statistically, the best defense in the NFL in multiple categories. It's just not the time. Not the time. Anyways, coming up next, we're going to talk about some Cowboys drama, and coming up in my final topic of the day, 3 teams are left undefeated: the Seahawks, the Steelers, and the Titans. I think after this Sunday, only one of these teams will be undefeated. I'm going to let you know who it is. That coming up later in the show.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment, I put 3 losses from last Sunday into perspective with the Patriots, the Eagles, and the Browns. Look, there's a lot of sports fans out there where they don't really care about the circumstances of the teams or of individual players. There's a lot of fans out there who really just could not care less. But me, being somebody who really pays attention to that kind of stuff and who wants to be fair to players, it's not just all about, oh, well, they won or they lost. It's not always about that. There's good wins, there's good losses, and there's sometimes excuses as to why it is a team played bad. The Patriots, one practice. The Eagles, they're down to Carson Wentz and Jason Kelce and a bunch of dudes who next season could probably be out of the league. And then as for the Browns, they are facing the best defense probably in the league. They're number 1, number 2, and number 3 in like almost every single statistical category. Baker Mayfield has injured, cracked ribs, and it's just not the time to fall off the wagon for Baker. As soon as he got hit by that defense, that by the way pressures quarterbacks on 50% of their dropbacks, as soon as he got hit once and driven into the ground, he did not look the same. They finally pulled him in the third quarter. He should not have even played if he was that hurt. Speaking of a team that shouldn't have even played, the Dallas Cowboys. Did you guys see them against the Cardinals? Now, I have a whole other problem with the fact that the Cowboys game was the late game. I don't understand why they didn't flex the Chiefs and the Bills. I don't know if they just couldn't make it work. Maybe it was a time zone thing. I have no idea. I just thought that maybe the Chiefs and the Bills would have made for a better, true night game. But it is what it is. They had the Cardinals and the Cowboys on, and it wasn't even competitive. I thought it'd be competitive. I don't think the Cardinals are that good. And I don't know. Maybe they just are, or maybe they faced weak competition. I'm sure as hell not going to give them much credit for beating the Cowboys, because the Cowboys' defense is pathetic, and I think they've quit on their coach. Now, before I get into the drama piece of this, let me just go with the game. Kyler Murray was 9 of 24 for 188 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. Those were his passing numbers. 9 of 24. And you got blown out by 20 plus points. I think 28 points. He was 10 carries for 74 yards on the ground. They gave up 164 yards to Kenyon Drake, and like 60 of those yards came on just a clock-killing play. They ran the football, and Kenyon Drake took it to the house at the end of the game. Let me say this right now. The effort I am seeing from the Cowboys defense is just pathetic. I have seen multiple clips, especially on that Kenyon Drake run. Jalen Smith had a perfect opportunity. If he just kicked it into high gear for a split second and ran full speed, he would have caught Kenyon Drake. He jogged. I don't even think it was a jog, actually. It was embarrassing. I wish I could show you the clip. But it was just terrible. If you go back and you watch the play, I would just say look for Jalen Smith on the play. Because I have never seen somebody try so little to make a tackle that was theirs for the taking. It was just horrid. Actually, you know what? I think it was on I take it back. It was on the DeAndre Hopkins catch. I just remembered. It was on the DeAndre Hopkins catch and run that he had, I think his biggest play of the game. And Jalen Smith had the perfect chance to try and tackle him. He didn't get to. It was terrible. The defense doesn't look like it's trying. The offense looked like it gave up. They couldn't protect Andy Dalton from a defensive front without Chandler Jones. He's out for the season, and they still couldn't protect him. Now, Cowboys fans, I know you're probably upset about that game because one of your receivers got tackled, and there was a pick, and the refs didn't call it, right? They didn't call pass interference, they let it stand, and they went ahead and they counted the interception as an interception. I get that. Calls happen sometimes. But that's not the reason you lost the game. You lost the game because Ezekiel Elliott fumbled on back-to-back drives. I think other than Daniel Jones, Ezekiel Elliott leads the league in fumbles. And the fact in your offensive line is garbage, and you lost Zach Martin. I mean, your offensive line is down to Connor Williams and a bunch of dudes. You have a 4th round pick rookie as your starting center to take over for first ballot Hall of Famer Travis Frederick. You've got 2 undrafted tackles. I don't even know who's taking over for Zach Martin at this point, but this is just not good. When you look at this team now, I really sit back and I'm like, why did they draft CeeDee Lamb? Because Amari Cooper, he is your number one receiver. You paid him $20 million, but he doesn't seem to play at any point in time other than when the team is hopelessly behind. Michael Gallup is there, and I really like Michael Gallup. He's in the last year of his contract. I don't think they have the money to extend him. Like, I think either they need to trade him away, or are they going to franchise tag him? No, I mean, they might franchise tag Dak. I mean, that's just a sticky situation. And then you look at Wilson, their fourth receiver. That dude can play. Why did they draft CeeDee Lamb when they have so many other holes on their team? I get it. They had CeeDee Lamb really high on their draft board, and he fell to them, and they said, hey, best value for the pick. When you have two really good wide receivers, three, if you actually look at it, three really good wide receivers, why on earth did you draft CeeDee Lamb? And isn't it interesting how the look of this team is now compared to entering the season? Entering the season, people looked at this team and said, alright, they're going to get Leighton Vander Esch back. Yes, they lost Byron Jones, but the rest of that defense is there. And then they signed Gerald McCoy, and they signed Dontari Poe, and also they get Aldon Smith back, and Everson Griffin. And you look at the offensive line, and you're like, hey, Collins is there, Smith is there, Martin's there. Yes, they have a new center, but the rest of the offensive line is like really solid outside of center and left guard. Like, everything should be fine. You still have Dak under a new contract, Ezekiel Elliott's motivated, and Pollard, and you've got now 4 really good receivers, and you finally have a tight end that can separate, and we are 6 games into the season, and people have completely bailed on the Cowboys. And the only reason I think anybody is even talking about the Cowboys at this point in time is because they have a realistic shot to still win their division. And, I mean, no one's talking about them really from a football perspective. At least I don't really want to look at them in a football perspective. I'm more interested in what on earth is their offseason going to look like. They have so many big contracts. DeMarcus Lawrence isn't even top 3 on his team in terms of quarterback pressures. I mean, he is the most overpaid defensive player in the league right now. Jalen Smith, he might be right now the most overpaid linebacker in the league. Everson Griffin, he has done nothing for this team. Aldon Smith, he hasn't played football in 5 years. He is their best defensive player by far. It is ridiculous what has gone on with this team. Now, to get into the drama side of things, now that I'm done ripping them for this loss against the Cardinals, in which they looked absolutely pathetic. The drama that's going on in the Cowboys is insane to me. So Jane Slater, very, very trusted, respected NFL reporter for the NFL Network, she tweeted, I think on Monday or Tuesday, I want to say Tuesday, she took to Twitter and she said, Cowboys players initially bought into keeping things internal. Now as they sit 2-4, the discontent is leaking out on the coaching staff. Quote, totally unprepared. They don't teach. They don't have any sense of adjusting on the fly. Another player said, they just aren't good at their jobs. She tweeted later that head coach Mike McCarthy said, he's got to keep his finger on the pulse of this football team. And on defense and Mike Nolan and whether the players believe in him or not, he said, it's definitely a change. Mike McCarthy got this job for a few different reasons. Number one, because he's a big name, people remember him from working with Aaron Rodgers, he got ran out of Green Bay, he was out of football for a year, and Jerry Jones wants a big head coach with a big name because it's going to make people think he's making a giant move. He doesn't want to sign some no-name coordinator. He doesn't want to sign Eric Bieniemy. He doesn't want to sign Brian Daboll. He doesn't want one of those guys. He wants Mike friggin' McCarthy, a guy who's won a Super Bowl, who had a lot of success with Aaron Rodgers. He wants that guy at the helm. The other thing, though, Mike McCarthy is not an alpha. He is no alpha. When I look at head coaches in the NFL that I think are like an alpha, I think of a guy like Mike Vrabel. I think of a guy like Bill Belichick. I think of Mike Tomlin. And you know what? I don't think any of those guys Jerry Jones would ever hire to be his head coach, because they would do all the talking, and Jerry Jones does not like that. We know Jerry Jones' history. Firing Jimmy Johnson, all because he wanted the credit when he had a great team. He had a great team, and he fired 2 head coaches because he couldn't stand the fact that he wasn't getting the credit. This is Jerry Jones. He has done a terrible job with his team. He's the acting general manager, he and his son, and while they've made some good draft picks, the guys they have decided to sign, they've signed some guys early, and it hasn't worked out. Watching Andy Dalton against a Cardinals defense that, in my mind, is not good. They have a few good players on defense, one of them's injured. Other than that, it's older Patrick Peterson, and it's Budda Baker, and that's kind of it. And you look at how Andy Dalton performed against that team. Either the offensive line is that bad, and it just might be, or Andy Dalton himself is that bad, which I don't think he is, or Dak Prescott is the best quarterback in the NFL. Because the difference in this team with Dak and without Dak was so evident in that game. I'm almost ashamed that I even made the argument that this could end up being a Ryan Tannehill situation. I'm almost ashamed I even brought it up. Because my God, did Andy Dalton make me out to look ridiculous. Dak Prescott made himself so much money based off of this one game. He made so much money. And earlier I talked about how when a team quits on the head coach, you need to fire the head coach. Because as soon as they've lost the locker room, and as soon as the players no longer respect you, you need to make a change. Because they're not going to listen to the head coach. The coach can't get them amped up. The players don't have any respect for him. What do the players fear? And they all know Mike McCarthy's not the guy in charge. They all know who they answer to. They answer to Jerry Jones because that's the way he wants it to be. He's a meddling owner. And it's what he's always been. And I know Jerry Jones, he really, really wants to win another Super Bowl. I believe him when he says he wants to win, but I think he wants to win his way. I don't think winning a Super Bowl is so important to him that he would, let's just say in a hypothetical world, that he would bring in a guy like Mike Tomlin, who would probably whip this team into shape and make them an instant contender. I don't think he could do it. Because everyone would give Mike Tomlin the credit and not him. Whereas him signing Mike McCarthy, sure, people would give Mike McCarthy some credit for changing, but Jerry Jones would get credit because he brought Mike McCarthy in when no other team wanted him. No other team even thought about bringing Mike McCarthy in. Aaron Rodgers completely just threw shade at him, threw him under the bus, backed him over, and all the teams looked at it and said, you know, I mean, he's probably right. Mike McCarthy, I mean, that's Aaron Rodgers. Like, they've won one Super Bowl. Haven't been able to get back. They haven't been the best team. He has, like, no run game. Yada, yada, yada. People completely bought into what Aaron Rodgers said, and no one was interested. Until Jerry Jones. And now we look at this team, moving forward. They aren't even projected to win their division by ESPN. They have the Eagles winning it at 6-9-1. If you're telling me the Cowboys can't be better than 6-9-1, fire the defensive coordinator, fire Mike McCarthy, and just start fresh. Just, for the love of God, start fresh. I mean, at this rate, the way that the Cowboys look, the lack of talent that they have, this team could end up getting a top 10 pick. Can you imagine if the Dallas Cowboys, with all the talent that supposedly they were coming into the season with, can you imagine if they ended up finishing the season with like a top 10, a top 15 pick, and a chance to draft one of these quarterbacks? Can you just imagine that scenario? I'm not saying that the Cowboys are going to be bad enough to get one of those picks. I don't think so, because I think they're going to be able to beat up on teams like the Giants. Well, actually, you know what? After seeing how the Giants fought back, that might actually be a closer game. The Giants might actually be able to beat them at this point. I don't know. It's one game with Andy Dalton. It's his first game as the full-time starter. It was his first time actually having to play a full game since he's been a Bengal. I get that. I want to give him more than just this game. But my God, for you to look that inept, for this team to look that bad, when at least under Dak Prescott, they had a top 5 offense. I think it was ranked number 2 in the league. For them to be that good and then for them to fall off the face of the planet against the Cardinals, which again, I don't think are a good team. Their quarterback is a better runner than he is a thrower. It was embarrassing. It was a very, very embarrassing loss. And now the team is coming out against Mike McCarthy. I'm already seeing a lack of effort on multiple plays this season. You can even go to the Odell Beckham end-around play. 2 of the Cowboys players basically tackled themselves. One of them ran out of bounds, and then Jalen Smith, he was lollygagging his way across the field to even make a play, and then even by the time he got there, he basically got himself blocked. Effort is the name of the game. The thing I love about the Dolphins and Brian Flores is the team is playing with effort, and they do every single week. Just because your team might have a bad record doesn't mean they quit on you. The Bengals, I don't think they've quit on their head coach. I don't really know what to make of Zach Taylor so far, but they haven't quit on him. At least not to my eyes. The Chargers, they haven't quit on Anthony Lynn, even though I think Anthony Lynn could be on his way out of there. In Dallas, in New York, it seems like, the Jets, it seems like they've quit on their head coach. That's all I'm trying to say. I would not be surprised if Mike McCarthy, following this season, got fired. I would not. This is going to be a very underachieving season for Dallas, given the talent at least we thought they had, the expectations of this team heading into the season, the expectations of Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott. And Jerry Jones did say, because of the injuries, they need to reevaluate where they're supposed to be at the end of the season. Look, you can reevaluate it, and you can be worse than you expected the team to be, given the injuries and things like that. I get that. But Jerry, I'm telling you, man, use the eye test and just watch it. Does this team look any better than last year? I think they're worse. And I get it, obviously they had some players last year that they don't this year, but they look worse under Mike McCarthy than they did under old 8-8 Jason Garrett. And I think it's unacceptable. It is flat out, in my mind, unacceptable for them to look this pathetic. And I think it's shameful that they still have a chance to win this division. My God. Anyways, coming up next, final topic of the day. 3 teams remain undefeated. I think there will be only one following this Sunday. That coming up next, final topic of the day. Thank you for tuning in.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about the Cowboys' drama revolving around the team. The players apparently don't believe in the coaches. They don't think they're making any adjustments. And plain and simple, they don't even think they're doing their job. And you see how they played against the Cardinals. They were pathetic from opening snap until the end of the game. Even when they had a chance to at least stop the Cardinals when they were just running the football and maybe have a chance to get one more garbage time touchdown to make the score look a bit more respectable than it actually was, they gave up a 50-yard plus run to Kenyon Drake, and Drake finished the game with 160 plus yards rushing. It was embarrassing of the Cowboys to perform that way. They went into the game knowing Andy Dalton was going to be their starter. They went into the game knowing their offensive line was bad. Now, I'm sure they didn't expect Zach Martin himself to get injured, but for them to look that flat, for them to look that uninspired, that unmotivated following Dak's injury, I mean, most teams following something like that, they at least go out there and play really hard for their guy. And it looked like they didn't play hard at all. Ezekiel Elliott fumbled twice, Andy Dalton with 2 interceptions, and I get it, one of them was not fair, but life isn't fair, and the NFL isn't fair. It's not the National Fair League, it's National Football League, okay? It was a terrible performance by the Cowboys, and you hope that they don't repeat that performance in the coming weeks, but they aren't getting any better. They're only losing more players, so I don't really know. But there are 3 teams that I want to talk about right now, and they're all undefeated. The Seahawks, the Steelers, and the Titans. The Seahawks are coming off of a bye week, so they didn't even get to play, but the Steelers played, the Titans played, they both picked up victories, and they both picked up some pretty good victories. The Steelers, while they dominated the Browns, the Titans, they almost lost to the Texans, but because their head coach is a genius, he was able to save them some time. They drove down the field, they scored the game-tying touchdown, and then it just came down to the coin toss. They won the coin toss, went down, Derrick Henry touchdown, and they win the game. Now, before I tell you which team I believe is going to be the last one to remain undefeated, let me say this about all 3 of these teams. Coming into the season, all 3 of these teams everyone had a viewpoint of them that was somewhat negative. Right? You look at the Seahawks coming into the season, people said Pete Carroll and the Seahawks, they can't get out of their own way. Right? Pete Carroll, he wants to run the football, even though Russell Wilson is the quarterback. They hold themselves back. They lean on the defense and the running game, and at this point, the defense isn't that great, but their secondary probably is going to be the strength of the team. Where's the pass rush going to come from? Did they really fix the offensive line? How's the running back stable going to look? And is this team going to look like the way it has since Russell Wilson was drafted? And are they going to continue to run past the football? Are they going to continue to run it on first down and then run it again on second and long, and then throw it on third down with some uncreative, just ugly play, and are they just going to struggle? The Steelers. Coming into the season, they were looked at as a team that last year was pretty damn good. They finished 8-8 when Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges were their quarterbacks, and both of them are awful. I think Hodges is out of the league at this point, and Mason Rudolph, I don't even know why he still has his backup job, but it is what it is. But they were looked at as a team that was probably going to be defensively driven with an older quarterback coming off of an injury. The question was, how is Ben Roethlisberger going to look? Is he going to look anything like he did before? He's coming off Tommy John surgery. For a quarterback to get that, I don't know if another quarterback had ever had that surgery before Ben Roethlisberger. And I believe it was in his throwing arm. So how is it supposed to look? And I'm going to be honest, Ben Roethlisberger, to me, he hasn't wowed me. He hasn't been one of the top 10 best quarterbacks. I think in the moment, Pro Football Focus has him ranked as number 12. But their offense hasn't been big plays like it used to be. It hasn't been the best in the world, but he's been good. He's been managing the game for them, and I think that's kind of what he has to be at this point in his career. But they were looked at as a team that's going to be defensively driven, and what were you going to get from the quarterback again? And then as for the Titans, they've been 9-7 the past 3 years. What on earth what is going to be different? Ryan Tannehill, wasn't that more of like a fluke? Wasn't that just, people, they weren't really sure what the offense was going to look like? Mariota's one quarterback, Ryan Tannehill's another, he's completely different, he's not the runner Mariota is, but he's a better thrower, how's it going to look? And what we have found out is that the Titans are actually one of the best teams in the league, and their offense is one of the most efficient and one of the best in the league, and Ryan Tannehill is a top 5 quarterback. And with Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, what we have seen is, they're letting Russell Wilson cook. And their defense is actually the worst in the league. Before their bye week, Seattle was the worst defense in the league. I haven't looked at where it's updated at the moment, but after this weekend, I believe I think they're going to go back to being the worst in the league. I don't think they're going to turn it around coming off of the bye week, even with the extra time to prepare. So let me go ahead and say this. The Seahawks, they play the Cardinals. I think they're going to lose this game. And the reason why I think they're going to lose this game is because of the threat Kyler Murray poses, right? Kyler Murray did what he did. That Cardinals team did what they did to the Dallas defense. Dallas's defense was at least statistically in terms of yards, was better than even the Seahawks was. The Seahawks, remember, I told you guys the graphic, the two worst defenses in NFL history have been this year in terms of yardage. Through the first 5 weeks, Seattle and the Falcons were number 1 and number 2, the worst defenses in NFL history. The only reason Seattle isn't there at the moment is because they have a bye week. I think after this week it will be right back there, and I think it's because they won't be able to stop Kyler Murray. Even though Kyler Murray is not that accurate of a passer, 9 of 24 was it against the Cowboys? He's got a great arm, but his accuracy just isn't that great. But he as a running threat is something to be dealt with, right? Everyone talks about Lamar Jackson and what he can do as a runner and how electrifying he is. I think Kyler Murray, just from an acceleration standpoint, is better than Lamar. I'm not going to say he's a better overall runner than Lamar Jackson, but from a sheer acceleration standpoint, is anyone faster than Kyler Murray at the quarterback position? Now, I'm not going to say he's going to be as inaccurate as he was against Seattle, as he was against the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not saying that. I think it will be maybe a bit more competitive because division rivalry games are usually competitive, unless you're the Browns. In that case, you get blown out by 2 of them, and all 3 of them drop 30-plus points on you. But when it comes to Seattle, they typically play their division rivals tougher. They typically do. So I'm not going to say it's going to be a blowout loss, but I think Kyler Murray is going to put up a lot of points on this defense. I think that he's going to frustrate them. He's going to get a lot of yards. And I think it's going to happen mainly because of the fact that he is one of the, next to Lamar, he is the best running threat at, maybe next to Lamar and Josh Allen, depending on if you want to give Josh Allen that kind of credit. He's the best running threat at the quarterback position outside of those guys. He is electrifying. And I think he's going to convert a lot of third downs. He's going to get some chunk plays. He's going to frustrate that defense. Is there anybody on Seattle's defense that can really keep up with him? I don't think there's anyone on the defensive line that can. Maybe Shaquille Griffin. Or I'm sorry, not Shaquille. Shaquem Griffin. Maybe if he's active in playing, he's faster. He can maybe chase him down and keep up with him. Other than that, it's got to be dudes in the secondary. And none of the linebackers are fast enough. It's got to be guys in the secondary. So are they going to risk putting a spy on him and just making it a bit more obvious what they're playing? I don't know. Even with the bye week of Seattle, and Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson are outstanding on bye weeks. They are. They win most of their games off bye weeks. I don't have what the record is in front of me right now, but they are outstanding. They're one of the best combos in NFL history. I just think they're due for a loss. And I think the Cardinals, coming off of that win against the Cowboys, are going to be riding high. They're going to be playing with a lot of confidence. And they're looking at the Seattle defense and what it has been unable to do. And they are just chomping at the bits to get a hold of them. And I don't think they're going to play with any fear. I think they're going to go right at Seattle's defense. They're going to throw it. They're going to run it. And I think it might be a close game. But at the end of it, I think the Cardinals are going to take it. I just think they will. They're riding high. Kyler Murray is one of the ultimate mismatch problems. I think Russell Wilson will have a chance to maybe win the game in the end, but I have a sneaky suspicion that the Cardinals are going to win this game. Seattle is due for a loss, right? I didn't think they would even be this good. I didn't think they'd be 5-0. I don't think they're going to be undefeated this season. I think they're due a loss at some point, and they typically lose to at least one opponent you don't expect them to. This is a division rivalry game. I will take the Cardinals to win that game. And then the Titans and the Steelers, they take on each other, and it's going to be strength versus strength. Except for one thing. Tennessee is great at running the football. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are outstanding at limiting the run. I read you guys all the stats earlier. The Steelers are outstanding across the board on defense. But the one area where they can be had is in the passing game. They are a better rushing defense than passing defense. You can beat them deep. Whether it was Daniel Jones, or Jeff Driscoll, or Carson Wentz, or Deshaun Watson, they all seemed to throw for about 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. The thing is that Pittsburgh was also able to make all of them turn the football over because that's just what they do. The worst quarterback they've played so far statistically in the game was Baker Mayfield. He had the worst game against them of the 5. The best quarterback they're going to face this season in the first real challenge is going to be Ryan Tannehill. Remember earlier I talked about Joe Burrow and I said that he is one of 3 quarterbacks in the NFL to be top 10 in both positively graded throws and avoiding negatively graded throws? He's one of the 3. You know who the other 2 are? Russell Wilson and Ryan Tannehill. In order, it goes Russell Wilson, Ryan Tannehill, Joe Burrow. From best to worst. So Ryan Tannehill, I mean, he's second in the league in those categories. He is outstanding. This is the best quarterback they're going to face. He's a dual threat. He can really throw the football, and Tennessee can pound it. They have an outstanding play-action game, and one thing Tennessee has shown the willingness to do so is they will run the football against you even if you stack the box. Even if you stack the box, they are not afraid to run the football. Now, losing Taylor Lewan is huge, especially going into this game. So I will not be surprised if Pittsburgh's able to put a bit more pressure on him, or if they change the way they play just a little bit. I don't know who's going to be their tackle. I don't know who they're going to move over there. I think Kelly is their right tackle, so I don't know what they're going to do over there. But it will be a downgrade no matter what. There aren't many left tackles in the league as good or better than Taylor Lewan. So I think that will be a loss for them. But I will tell you this, I'm going to take the Titans to win this game. And the reason why I'm going to take the Titans to win this game is because I don't know really what to make of Pittsburgh. Again, let's just look at the teams, right? Let's put some context into the games that they've won. They struggled to beat a Giants team opening game of the season, in which they have a new system, a new head coach. Daniel Jones is just in his second year. It's his first year as the full-time starter. They have a bad offensive line, and they barely beat the Giants. And then they struggled against the Jeff Driscoll-led Broncos. And then they barely beat the Texans. And then they struggled to put away an injured, beaten-up Philadelphia team. And then the one game in which they've looked dominant, they beat up a quarterback who has cracked ribs. That is their one dominant win, was against an injured quarterback. This team, this Titans team, for the most part, is healthy outside of Taylor Lewan. That tight end trio they've got, Corey Davis, A.J. Brown, Humphreys, Derrick Henry at running back, they've got a good trio of running backs. It seems like whether it's what's his name, McNichols or whatever, they've got some other running backs there that are really, really good. And their defense doesn't have a great pass rush, but it has a pretty solid secondary. But when you do look at the rankings and everything, they are in the bottom of the league, so they are there to be had. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, when it comes to a big play style offense outside of Claypool, haven't been one. They have not been a bombs away style offense like we were used to seeing years ago when they had Antonio Brown and Bell and Schuster all there in the offensive line. Like, they are no longer that team. It now is a much more controlled offense. It's Claypool, it's Washington, it's Juju, it's giving the ball to Connor, passing to the tight end. I mean, that is the kind of offense there. They are much more of a dink and dunk, more style offense, a more control the clock style of offense. That's just what they've been. And whether it's because Ben Roethlisberger's arm just isn't the same, or just because he's not used to playing with some of these guys, I don't know what it is, but their offense hasn't looked super explosive. If anything, this would be the game for them to kind of put it all together. This would be their best win. And again, I think that the loss of Taylor Lewan is huge, and their defense is there to be had, but I think this could end up really being a shootout. I really do think that Ryan Tannehill could take advantage of this defense. Their play-action game is one of the best in the league. Ryan Tannehill is by far and away, I think since he became the starter in Tennessee, he's been the best or the second best play-action passer in the league when it comes to yardage and touchdowns and his accuracy, everything. He is great. I don't know if there's anyone on that Pittsburgh defense who can cover A.J. Brown, and even if there is, they're going to have to probably double him. I don't know if they're going to want to blitz Ryan Tannehill, because he's been good against the blitz as well. And I guess, hey, if you want to stack the box against Derrick Henry, go ahead. But Derrick Henry is, again, I think the leaders in yards after contact. Since he's taken over, he is like the leader by far and away in yards after contact. I remember last year they pointed out that his yards after contact would have been good enough for top 5 rushing in the NFL. So I think it's going to be strength versus strength. And I get it, people are really, really hot on the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they managed to do to the Browns, but let's be honest, this is also the first team they're facing that do both aspects of offense really well. They're not only one of the top rushing teams in the NFL, they are also one of the top passing teams in the NFL. They have a top 10 quarterback. Right now, statistically ranked a top 5 quarterback by QBR, Pro Football Focus grade. Ryan Tannehill's been one of the best since he became the starter of Tennessee. This isn't a mirage. He has now, if you include the postseason with Tennessee, he's been the starter for over 16 games. He's won the majority of them. I think he went 7-3 as a starter in the regular season, and then he went 2-1 in the postseason, and now he's 5-0. This is real. And this is going to be Pittsburgh's greatest challenge yet. Are you going to cover? Are you going to double cover A.J. Brown? Okay, well, they got Corey Davis and 3 really good tight ends that can all separate. Oh, and Adam Humphries. Are you going to stack the box against Derrick Henry? Okay, well, I mean, you are opening it up for them to still try and run the football on you, but then you're also going to hurt your defense because they've got great receivers and a great play-action game. I think this is a game for the Titans to win, and I'm not saying the Titans are going to go undefeated the rest of the season. I don't think so. But I just think going into this game, Pittsburgh hasn't had a true challenge yet. The Giants, I don't really think they were much of a challenge. Their defense was, but their offense wasn't. The Denver with Driscoll, no. No, I'm not giving them credit for that. If you want to say the Texans, okay, go ahead. The Texans are one of the worst teams in the NFL. The Eagles, led by Carson Wentz and I don't know who, Greg Ward, who was their top receiver that game? I don't even know. But you want to give him credit for that win? Okay. And if you want to give him credit against the Cleveland Browns for shutting down a team that literally only had really their running game to go to because their quarterback has hurt ribs, okay. Go ahead and give him that credit. Tennessee, I think, is going to cause Pittsburgh a lot of problems that they haven't had to deal with yet, and they will be kind of their reality check into this NFL season. The Steelers did lose Devin Bush for the rest of the year, which I think is a huge loss. He's their young, really fast middle linebacker that can cover because he is fast, one of the fastest guys in the league. So that's a big loss to them. And I know that Pittsburgh's probably chomping at the bits. They want to get their revenge on Tennessee because of how they handled COVID, and they postponed the game, and they had to move it back, and they messed with the bye week, and everything, and Ebron wasn't happy about it, and multiple players weren't happy about it. I get all that. They're going to come out with a rage, but I just think Tennessee's going to smack them in the mouth because they've had a cakewalk of a schedule thus far, and this is their first real challenge, and I'm not going to doubt Tennessee. I will not doubt Tennessee. They have one of the smartest head coaches in the league, one of the best quarterbacks, best running backs, best overall cultures, it seems, with this team. And I think they're going to win the game. Thursday night's game is going to be really, really weird. If the Eagles win that game, I mean, they're first in their division. That's so strange. They will be, what will that be? They'll be 2-4-1. And they'll be first in their division. Just shameful. Anyways, thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you. And have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.